And we'll let everybody in. Hi, everyone. Hey,
Hello.
Dolores. Hey, Jerry.
Hello.
Nice to have you. Dolores, we were just talking, Clark and Connor lived in the same area for many, many years. And so they were just talking, New Englanders, how they were getting some snow the last few weeks. And are you in Utah? I believe that's where you are, correct?
Yeah, I'm in Utah. Yep.
Yeah. How's your weather been? Are you experiencing that or is spring sprung?
No, it's spring. Spring seems to spring every few days, and then we go back into winter, and then it's spring again, and then it's so right now I would say we're probably in the fall with winter projected in the next few days.
It skipped right over summer, huh?
Oh, well, actually, it was summer last week. I actually sat outside the grill, and I have a sweater on this morning in my office with a sunburn underneath. My shoulders are sunburnt from grilling. So we had
Nice.
summer for like 2 days, then it turned into fall, and it's supposed to be winter. We're supposed to get some light snow here in a couple days or something. So funny how that works.
Yeah, life is often stranger than fiction, right?
Yes.
Well, great to have you. Hey, Jerry, good to have you. We're a couple minutes after, so let's go ahead and get started. Want to welcome everyone to our Pragmatic Institute office hours. We hold these every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern with a different Pragmatic instructor. And today we have the pleasure of Clark Smith. Hey, Clark.
Hello.
Clark has to give us his French restaurant where Connor, he needs to give us his rec.
I can't find it. That's why I actually have to ask, but even asked my wife, but I cannot remember the name. It's been so long. I don't know how many restaurants survive for 20 years.
True. And it's probably one of those things that'll just come to you, at some random time, right? But
Yeah.
well, we're happy to have you. Also wanted to give a shout out to the PAC. This is the Pragmatic alumni community. We just recently hit over 6,000 members, so very excited about that. Seeing some really impressive titles in there as well. We have VPs, CPOs, heads of product who are all really there to share their knowledge. Folks also have access to all of our instructors. So lots of resources, tools, and templates. And now, no matter how you train with us, you get lifetime access. So very excited about that. Folks can check out pragmaticinstitute.com/community for more info. In the meantime, we want to dig in. As always, we do have our questions that have been submitted prior to, but we certainly always want to hear from folks on the call as well. And now, no matter how you train with us, we are doing that promotion where the best live question does get lunch to their favorite restaurant on us. So Clark will be the judger at the end, and however you'd like to do it. It could be your favorite question, it could be your favorite topic you like to talk on. So feel free to pop those questions in the chat. You can send them to me privately. But in the meantime, Clark, I have your first question from Karen. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. So Karen says, what do you think is the main focus we should be paying attention to when it comes to the development phase of a product? Our company is heavily fixed on sprints, but I want to make sure that we're not rushing through important components that will bite us later.
Yeah, good question. And of course, that is one of the things that people often struggle with a little bit when they get into more of an agile, product development model is, we're working on having these sprints. We try to, deliver stuff in short bursts. And I mean, I think far and away the most important thing to stay focused on, to keep in mind, is from a big picture perspective. What is the big problem that we are trying to solve, and for whom? Because it is really easy when you are focusing on sprints, focusing on short bursts of dev effort to deliver some kind of a usable, functional product, to deliver things in little bits and pieces. And it's easy sometimes to slowly drift kind of off track. And so there's a couple of things to remember that we talk about in build class. We talk about the fact that just because the code is done doesn't mean that that product is ready to go to market. So think about how can we deliver real tangible value that completely solves a particular problem. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that just because the code is written doesn't mean you should push it to your users. Make sure that when you do actually push code out, when you make it available to your users, that it is a fully usable solution that solves a real tangible problem.
Mm-hmm. And, I think I'm interested in the last part of her question too, like, what we're not rushing through important components that will bite us later. What maybe are some of those things that you're like, look, be on the lookout for this. It could bite you.
Well, I can't speak to it for her product, but I'm glad I don't have to remember all of them. There were so many times when we would leave off 2 features because they seemed kind of small. And then we would push it into the market and we'd realize this would have been so much better with those 2 features if we had just waited one more sprint before we actually released this product to the market. It would have been 100 times better. And so that's why it's really important to not think in terms of individual features, think in terms of solving a problem. Because I still remember times when, we split something up, we pushed something out because we were trying to move fast, and then we kicked ourselves for months. Because if we had just thought about how do we deliver everything that somebody needs to do to pay for something online, how do we deliver everything that they need to do to complete this process, instead of pushing some half-baked product into the market, if we had waited an extra 4 or 5 weeks, we could have pushed something that was so much better into the market. And sometimes the problem is you don't have time to slow down and go back and do those 2 things that, were on your list that would have made it better. And all of a sudden you realize 6 months later, you've got this thing in the market. It's maybe good enough, but it's not really that good. And so a lot of times those little things that you think, well, we'll do that in the next release, or we'll come back and add that. That's where you leave out things that actually create a much better experience for your user. And sometimes those things where you leave out a feature here or a feature there, it ends up making the difference between your users actually embracing that solution and them feeling like, oh, this is, not that great of a solution. It doesn't really solve the problem for me.
Yeah.
So.
And it's so funny because I feel like as product people, we always have that conversation of like, how do you say no, right? So it's like, people wanted it yesterday. They always want it yesterday. So it's really important to kind of stand that ground so that you can, produce the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, that's one of the things we talk a lot about in the build class is just how do you make sure that when, you're planning your releases, that you plan them around delivering a complete solution, not a half-baked solution. And so that's why we do think that there's a difference between a sprint and a release, and they're not the same thing. And so it's okay to have code that you hide until it's actually a complete solution.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Hi, Pam. So Pam joined us. Welcome. Happy to have you. As a reminder to everybody live on the call, we do have Best Live Question Wins lunch, their favorite restaurant on us. So pop those in the chat, send them to me privately, but we certainly want to hear from you. In the meantime, I have this next one from Alex Clark. Alex says, I'm looking for more insight into best practices when it comes to automate regression testing. Any resources or intel are greatly appreciated.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things when you start looking at how to automate testing. And there's 2 things to keep in mind going into it. First of all, you can never automate all of your regression testing. There are going to be things that you can't test using automated tools. And it's really important going into it to have an understanding of what those things are. So make sure that you understand realistically what can automated tools test and what are the things that they can't test. The second thing you're going to probably find is that it's going to require some different skill sets. So when we started automating a lot of our testing, we realized there was a role that we didn't even have inside the company. We had to go create a role for somebody in our QA organization to build all of those scripts to do that regression testing. That's a very kind of specific skill set. The second thing we found was that there were things that we could automate the testing of, but it changed the way our dev team built things. And so they had to think about, how do we build some of these things in order to be able to take advantage of those automated regression testing tools. And so it does have a bigger impact than you might think going into it. And so I think it's important, first of all, make sure you've got the skill sets, make sure your QA team, or somewhere in the organization, somebody who knows how to actually write the scripts to run the testing. Make sure that your dev team understands what you're trying to accomplish, because it may change the way they have to actually develop things. And then make sure that you have a good understanding of what are the things that we simply won't be able to use regression tools for, where we still have to do manual QA on those parts of our solution. As I recall, and it's been a few years since we rolled this out, but I think in the first several months, we were only able to automate about 25% of our testing. I think we got up to about 75%, but we were never able to get much past that. So it's amazing. It is going to help you move a lot more quickly. It does take some thoughtful preparation as you think about skill sets and how's this going to impact the way we actually build things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alex, hopefully that was helpful. This next one comes from Shelly Clark, and she wants you to get creative. So Shelly says, I'm putting together a team of product marketers, 4 to 6 total, and would love some insight on how to quickly and effectively create connections. It's safe to say everyone is over the Zoom building team lunches and happy hours, and the sooner we see each other's talents and capabilities, the better.
Really, it's hard to believe after 14 months that people are over Zoom building team lunches. Yeah. So a couple of things come to mind just based on some of the things that we even do during our courses. But I think one of the things that I would encourage you to do is actually pick, and you can grab some of these from the alumni community site, but pick some specific tangible activities that folks can do either in pairs or in a small group. So think about, all right, great, let's get these guys working together. Let's pick a specific product or a specific persona, and let's actually go through and create a positioning document and just build in an hour and throw them into that process and get them thinking through, okay, who's the persona? What are the problems we solve? And actually go through it. I've had people who enjoy the exercise that we do in the focus class, where you create a positioning document in an hour, so much they've adopted that as a tool for their teams. You don't get to the finished product. You don't get a fully baked positioning statement in an hour, but it allows you to start, and it gets people thinking, and also using that time constraint keeps it from becoming an all-day activity with the entire team being in there. So I would actually think about where you need to develop sort of their knowledge, need to kind of get them working on some tangible deliverables. And again, what comes out of that initial conversation maybe isn't going to be 100%, but it's going to get them started thinking about building a user persona, building a buyer persona. The templates for those are on the alumni community site. Same thing is true for going through the process of building a positioning document. And make it an hour-long meeting, get as far into it as you can, because that's also going to help them start to figure out where do they have gaps. What are the things where we don't know this persona very well? Let's go do some more research to figure out who they are. But it's a great way to start that process, to get people working together, particularly if you're bringing together people from different parts of the organization, to get them to start thinking about who are our users, who are our buyers, what are the problems we solve for them, what are the things that we don't know that we need to go do more research on to understand them better.
Yeah. And I like what you say about it doesn't have to be this big cumbersome process. I mean, especially like, we hear more and more about that agile mentality, right? And that methodology that more and more folks seem to be using. It's like, that's such a great way to just kind of dip your toe. Plus so many folks who are product people across industries, across companies, across positions, their duties are so different. So getting that input is really great.
Yeah, and I would tell you, I mean, at least our experience just in doing, our courses online, if you're going to do that kind of stuff, have it be 3 or 4 people. So, since she's got 4 to 6 people, split them in half, give them the same challenge. Say, look, we're going to take an hour, go build a couple of positioning statements, go build a user persona, go build a buyer persona. And then come back to as a group and talk through, okay, what did you guys come up with? What did we come up with? Where do we differ? Where are we the same? Again, it's both a great way to kind of build those connections across the team, get people thinking that way. And also then you can start to figure out, okay, where are our gaps in knowledge? And maybe where do we have some gaps in skills? Who are the people that are really good at the kind of, articulating things in a positioning statement? Who are the people who are really good at understanding who our users are? So it'll help you get a really good sense of people's skills.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite exercises because I just feel that light bulb goes off. And I'm sure you see that for your students time and time again as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Clark, I have one from Jerry who's on the call. Jerry says, the company I work for has a very green and young product management team, many fresh out of MBA school. We report up to our chief commercial officer, who also has an engineering and business development teams under him. Biz teams have us chasing that next shiny opportunity, while engineering has us chasing internal development projects. Morale's low, and I've been asked to help improve it. What if we have no product framework in place? Where do you recommend starting and why? Excuse me.
Yeah, that is really challenging. So a couple of things come to mind, and this is just based on my own experience, and we struggled with some of those things at one point after our company got bought by a PE firm, and we were trying to figure out all of this stuff. And one of the things that I think is really important when you're in that situation is to look for an opportunity to actually start to collect feedback from your users or your buyers. Jerry, I don't know if it's a B2B or a B2C product, but one of the things that we did was, and we didn't have a huge user base when we did this, we did a survey of our users to get feedback, what they liked, what they didn't like. Also, what were the challenges they were dealing with? And that was where the first light bulb went off for a lot of people in our organization. We started to really understand, who are these users? Who's using our product? How sophisticated are they? What are the things that they're struggling with? And so, I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more if you can share more without giving away anything proprietary.
So we are a small startup within a large company. So right now, because we are a startup, we don't have any existing customers.
Okay.
And so it's a greenfield opportunity. And so we do have a lot of technology partners that we work with to explore market verticals where we can solve, market problems.
Yeah.
And that's about all we have at the moment.
Okay. So I think then what I would think about doing, and I know this is hard because of COVID. COVID has made this harder for people. So you might have to do it even over Zoom if you can. If you can't and you're at a point where you've got some people who are getting vaccinated and you can get out and do this face to face, but is there a way where you can actually go spend some time understanding through those partners even, sort of what are the things out there that they see? What are the opportunities that you could take advantage of? And this is going to sound crazy, but the power of just documenting that stuff and putting it on paper is unbelievable. We kind of joke about this, but oftentimes the difference between an anecdote and data is that data is written down. And so start to come up with a way to just capture that feedback. You don't have to get feedback from 50 people. If you can go out and talk to 3 or 4 different partners in a particular vertical and get feedback, find a way to capture it. And then when you've got that situation where you're chasing after this shiny object, you've got somebody else saying we need to go do this, you can say, wait a second, I've talked to 3 of our partners. None of them have mentioned that as being something that's important to them. And so I think if you start to find a way to document some of the things that you're hearing, even if you end up getting feedback from a small number of people, 4 or 5 as a starting point, capture that feedback. What are the things that they told you were important to the people that they sell to? What are the things that they told you were important that were happening in that particular vertical? The power of having it written down so that you can start to share with people is one of the things that will then help you to start to say, okay, wait, I know this sounded great. You talked to one person, they told you to go do this thing, but we're out, capturing this feedback, and we're not hearing that from the other people that we're talking to.
Yeah, Clark, unfortunately, we have done some of that documentation and captured some partner feedback, but a lot of the team has felt that it's gone into a black hole with no response, and we continue to chase, business development opportunities and so we feel like, I know our team feels that our voice from a product perspective isn't being heard. And so we continue to get thrash, yet we put together this evidence.
Yeah.
But yeah, we still shift to chase after this opportunity because business development is chasing after this, and there's X dollars associated with those.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Is there anything like outside data that you could get? Is it something that Gartner or Forrester or somebody else does anything with?
I wish we just, I wish we had access to secondary and tertiary research, but unfortunately we had one of our sources cut off from us. So we did not renew that particular one. And so that made it even more difficult when that service was not renewed at the beginning of the year.
Interesting. Wow. That's
really hard. I mean, we feel like we've been chopped at the knees, multiple times. And so what's left to be able to do what we need to do as product managers?
Yeah, that's really hard. One last question, just one last thought. Do you have some sense of who those end users for the things you're thinking about building might be? I mean, is this still such a green field where you're not even sure who they are?
We don't, and it's typically, and I know for at least a couple of the verticals that I'm responsible for, it's usually not a single person or persona. It's typically a team that's collectively making those decisions.
Okay.
It's huge enterprise type solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. Tavin's got a great comment in the chat. If you're a startup, you have to get scrappy and creative, which is really true. I mean, that's what we did. We ended up, again, just to give you a little bit of context, the platform that we sold was a B2B marketing technology platform that was used by enterprise brands that sold through dealers and distributors. The best thing we ever did in terms of kind of addressing a challenge like the one you're talking about was we did this, and we literally used Key Survey to do it, but we did a survey of dealers, distributors, and franchisees just to try to understand what were their local marketing challenges. And it had, and we only got a few hundred responses the first time we did it. It was not like we went out and got thousands of pieces of feedback. The impact though of having that kind of input, because we weren't covered by Gartner and Forrester at the time, was unbelievable. It's harder in a situation like yours, even if, and I know this is, statistically, it's probably not something that would stand up to a ton of scrutiny, but even if you could start to, when you get that feedback from partners, capture it in a way that looks like it's more quantitative, so that you've got at least some things where you're asking questions in more of a survey format, so that you can try to come up with something where you can try to articulate pervasiveness. How widespread are these problems? Because at the end of the day, I think that sounds like that's really the challenge you're trying to deal with is, okay, how do we find the things that we want to go do that actually aren't just a salesperson telling us that he heard this from this one prospective customer, but that represents a bigger part of the market? That is tough. You know, that's a great thing. Also, you might go to the alumni community site and actually kind of put some of that out there, because you might have some folks that are working at smaller companies inside big organizations. They might have some other answers for how to solve it. I think that's one of the places where what did you say it was, Callie, 6,000 people on the alumni community site can be pretty helpful. They might have some better examples of things like that that you could tangibly go do to start to capture that. I hope that helped a little bit, Jerry. It sounds like you're in a tough spot. Yeah.
Yeah, we are in a tough spot. You know, I've tried with even going to industry conferences and webinars that are online because of COVID,
right,
and engaging with those particular speakers to have some data points in those verticals. And those aren't easy to get in this COVID world. So not many are very responsive. So it is difficult to get some of those data points. And then I've also started the process of putting some structure and some discipline to how we operate as a product management organization as well. And so using some of the elements of the Pragmatic framework of trying to understand the market, understanding product, and really building a case eventually to present to the executive team as to, you know, what that opportunity looks like, more in terms of a formal business case. So I've started that, but I was just curious if there was any other things to try and get ahead of this, because we're in a really tough position right now.
Yeah, that sounds tough. And that is, you know, you're kind of capturing one of the biggest challenges that we've seen from people since COVID. You know, we talk in foundations about the fact that, you know, sure, we want to hear from our customers, from competitors' customers, from evaluators and potentials. But I think for people, you know, who don't have customers today, finding those opportunities to get feedback is one of the biggest challenges, because it's a lot harder right now through Zoom and other tools to get feedback from people that you don't do business with. I think that has been one of the biggest challenges people have. And it is tough. I've heard people who have done what you've done. They use existing events. I've had people who say, look, we spent a lot of time lurking on message boards, on Reddit forums, on other places where people talk about solutions in this category. I mean, I'll open it up even to other folks who are in the session. Anybody else have stuff you've done to get feedback from the people out there who you don't get to talk to anymore? You can't go to a big event and talk to 50 people. So if anybody else, Pam, Kevin, anybody else has input, I'd love to hear it. Yeah, Callie, what are you going to say?
I wanted to offer one thing, Jerry, because I don't know if you're in the pack, but I mean, you know, the two best people you can talk to is me and Connor. You know, we are part of half of that team, and really we're concierge level, right? So if you want to see a call come to life, if you want to see a subject matter have an event created around it, I mean, that's what we do. So, you know, we should talk more about that, because I think that that's, to Clark's point, something that a lot of people are going through. And I think that they'd all be willing to, you know, show up and share, right? But I also saw Tappan came off of mute. Tappan, love to hear any insights you had, or if you wanted to share, I mean, even about that scrappiness of a startup or anything that you found worked for you. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I guess as a startup, you won't have access to a lot of those, you know, expensive resources. So whatever you can think out of the box, I don't know, Reddit, or you just have to kind of get a little creative, you know. So just, I don't know if anyone else is here has any other ideas, but if you're I didn't catch all the conversations, but if you're trying to, I guess find your that value proposition, you got to, just get out in the market and find that message that kind of resonates with your customers. So just, just talk to prospects as much as you can. And
yeah.
And I like Clark's point about really creating that, that huge problem, right? Like that quantitative research, because I feel like if you see how, urgent and pervasive it is, it's just only gonna support that argument. So, Tappan shared a Reddit link for you here as well. So go ahead and check that out. And welcome, Kevin. Happy to have you. Kevin came off
everyone.
Mute.
Hey, Kevin.
Where are you visiting us from, Kevin?
I'm in Texas, in New Braunfels, Texas, near San Antonio.
Nice. Well, happy
Welcome.
to have you.
Yeah. Sorry I joined late. I missed the question. So, but yeah.
And look, we love people that join late. We love people that leave early. We say these are your sessions. So come when you can, leave when you want. These are for you. So no worries at all.
Kevin, Jerry was just asking about when you're in a situation when you're part of a big company, but working on a brand new kind of part of your offering, and you're trying to kind of bootstrap something, given the challenges everybody's dealing with COVID, how do you actually get out there and get feedback to talk to different people so that, you're not just chasing after every new prospect that the sales team brings in, but that you start to get some clarity around what should we be building? How do we find, part of the market to go after with some focus, as opposed to chasing after every shiny new object that comes along, or what the, people in the bigger organization think we should be doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things that, if you're already part of a big company, that means you already have you probably have a lot of customers and a lot of products. I would start there. And, where hopefully what you're doing should be tangentially related to the other stuff that you're doing. And so talk to those existing customers that you have. You already have a network. And even if you don't have a network of those customers, because I see this a lot, like, we get into these big enterprise software companies and like we end up being so disconnected from the users, and we kind of forget, like, hey, let's just pick up the phone and call them. But I think that would be one of the things I would tap into, is like, find within your organization, figure out who actually knows the names and contact information of the actual customers who are using it and the buyers who are making the decisions to buy it. And just, even if there isn't an established user group, you can start by just, picking up the phone and asking them and talking to them, and talk about their day in the life, and talk about all the other tangential processes or things that they're doing, or other tools that they're doing, or places where they have other problems. That to me would be a good place to, start. But if you're,
good thought, Kevin.
So I don't know.
That's a really good thought.
Yeah, and it's hard because you can tell how many hats Jerry's wearing when you hear verticals with an S, as in plural, and morale booster. So we certainly feel your pain, and we're here for you. Come see us in the pack. We'll get you.
Yep. The pack's a great resource for that too.
Yep.
Great. Tabin, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jerry, do you have question for Jerry? Jerry, do you have a draft roadmap or something? Maybe a gut feeling or anything? Stake in the ground? I know something.
Yeah, we do. We actually have put together a 2 to 3 year roadmap for, and I want to say that it's really not a market roadmap. It's an internal feature roadmap. So
one thing you might do with that, go ahead, Tappan.
I know that's an issue already.
Yeah, but go ahead, Clark. I know you have some ideas.
Well, I was going to say, Jerry, I totally get it. And I think for something like that, one thing that you can do, even if it's not, we're big believers that, not everybody needs to see the same level of detail on your roadmap. And so if there's an opportunity for you to take that existing roadmap that might be feature-based, but roll it up a level, or two, so that instead of talking about individual features, you're talking about, you know, we're going to deliver this capability, we're going to solve this problem, but you know, articulating it that way so that you're not locking yourself into, you know, hey, we're delivering, you know, this particular thing at the end of the year. Then that is something that you can put in front of people to understand, does this, you know, resonate with you in terms of the specific kind of problems we're thinking about solving, the capabilities we're thinking about delivering, without getting into each of the individual features that might roll up to, you know, delivering that capability.
Yeah, and the initial feedback that we have gotten is that in the current state of what our release, feature release looks like, initially that feature set is so limiting that it doesn't have a lot of market traction in many verticals that we're looking at the moment. And so it's further down the road, 2-3 years from now, when we have more a feature-rich set to put out into the market, where it will gain much more interest and traction.
Interesting.
So what can you do in the near term? That's what we're struggling with.
Yeah.
You know, we always talk
I
about
feel
when
like-
you roll out a product that it's a vanilla, and then you build on that, and then, you know, you put chocolate, you know, sauce on top of it and sprinkles in the end, but we're not even close to that yet.
Yeah, that there's like a lot of people talk about a minimally viable product, but the
Absolutely.
V is like a pretty important word there, because it's not,
Right.
it doesn't mean that it's a minimally feature set, like it's not the smallest technical, you know, set of features. It's got to be a viable, you know, market product. And so
Yeah.
so it sounds like your MVP might be a 3-year, you know, take you 3 years to get there. So then you're trying to figure out, like, how do you validate the little pieces of it? Is that where
That's correct.
where it's getting challenging? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Getting the type of interest that people are willing to have that conversation and be with us for the long haul, recognizing that they're getting on early,
yeah.
but their interest is much later. So it's really trying to convince them to hang on with us, and we'll include, you know, their input into what that roadmap will look like, and so they have a chance, an opportunity to help steer that for us.
So do you have a user group, you know, that you're working with, or a set of customers, or that are your core customers that you're trying to build this for?
No, we don't have any customers. We do have a couple key partners that we're looking at formally signing some very large agreements with, and essentially banking on them to bring market opportunities within these verticals to us.
Well, maybe see if they can bring in some actual customers and users to actually set up a user group, and this should be like a working group, not a user group where you send them a survey and they fill it out, like an actual like working group where you get them involved and like talk about the problems, help you prioritize what you're going to be working on next, you know, bounce things off of, and you could just tell them, like, hey, you know, there's no commitment for you to purchase or use it. We're really just trying to get your input. And if it's a big enough problem, like if this is a, you know, $100,000, $200 million problem, you might even be able to say, like, to have customers pay to get in it. And then this could even be a way to, like, test, you know, that the like part of identifying a market problem is testing the willingness to pay, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And so have them, you know, and it doesn't even have to be a big dollar amount, like it just be nominal, but just have them where they have to go through some kind of approval process.
Yeah.
Or even one of the things that I've done in cases where I don't want to like push the envelope and like have them actually pay, just have them sign a statement of commitment.
Right.
that they're going to participate in the process, that they're not going to buy, but they're just going to, they're going to participate, and you're going to have a 6-month, set a window of time. Like, we're going to do this for 6 months, and I'm going to go and get like 5 or 6, participants in this, and get all of them to sign some paperwork that just says, we're going to participate in this process for 6 months. We're going to attend, however frequently you want to do the meetings, like once a month, once every 2 weeks, or whatever you want to do. And so they know that there's a time commitment, there's an expectation to show up, that they're going to at least invest the time. And then if they have to sign something, a lot of times they have to, you don't have to necessarily make them sign it, but it's just a way to kind of like, they'll usually have to raise that with their superiors. And again, I
think Kevin froze. Oh, there, we lost you there for just a second, Kevin. But Kevin, I think your point's a really good one, because again, sometimes people don't pay with currency. Sometimes they pay with their time. And I think you're right that even that kind of a commitment gets them invested.
Yeah, Kevin, I appreciate your feedback. I like your idea of getting some kind of document signed, because with the partner companies that we are working with, we besides a formal agreement for this particular effort, we haven't really refined and put a document together so that we know what the rules of engagement are. And so what those conversations have ended up turning into is a sales pitch for their product portfolio to us. which is the wrong, the wrong thing that we're trying to get out of it.
And when you set up this working group, you actually have to be really clear that you don't want any salespeople at all from any organization involved, because they will destroy your meeting.
Agreed.
And you won't have the openness, but that is interesting, man. You're in a challenging spot.
Yeah, it is. I thought we did have them, on board in this working group, but then it turned into a sales channel for them to sell us their portfolio of products and services, and us as a channel for them. And it was like, no, this is heading the wrong way.
Oh man. Well, that's great. I'm so glad. And look, Kevin coming in a little bit late, but coming in with some gems.
Right, man. Appreciate it.
We are
Thank you.
Happy to have you. I know we're wrapping up here, and Kevin, I don't know if you know, but we had best live question does win lunch on us from Pragmatic. Clark, I don't know. I'm kind of want to make that executive decision that we give it to both Jerry and Kevin today.
I agree with you totally. I definitely want to give it to Jerry because he's dealing with such a tough challenge.
Yeah.
At least he can get a free lunch out of this. And Kevin's given us such great input that I think they both deserve a free lunch out of this. So
thank you.
And we get a 2 for going today.
That's right.
Wow. Thank you.
This is actually really fun. I mean, it's great to be able to talk about a specific problem with somebody who's actually here, and hopefully it does help. Jerry, I know we probably sound like a broken record, but there is a ton of other great folks in the alumni community side who can probably help to, kind of flesh out some of the stuff as you think about, okay, where do we go from here? So it's really worthwhile. Check it out, because I know you've probably got some other folks like Kevin who have got other specific pieces of direction and feedback that'll help you as you try to unravel this tricky problem that you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's great. And we've been direct messaging with Jerry a little bit, so we'll make sure we get him dialed in to that. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Clark. We always love having you to pick your brain. So we appreciate your time. And then for anybody who's listening out there in YouTube land, I'm going to drop this in the link. I mean, we get, in the chat, so many times we get folks, these questions about implementation, right? How do they implement the training that they get from Pragmatic? So we are going to be doing a discussion on that next Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. That is going to talk from Pat J. He is the CPO of Aris Global, and he's going to talk about how he implemented the framework in not 1, not 2, but 3 separate companies. So certainly check that out. Just drop the link in there for those in YouTube land. You can find it on our website. Other than that, thanks to everyone who joined. Have a safe weekend.